Hello everybody and welcome to the Day 4 update for the Bladestorm champion. Last time we talked, we had just finished our 2-stone run. We were using Sinvictus Metal and a whole bunch of random gear. We've made a bunch of upgrades since then, and I have some good news, guys. We have improved our single target to the point where we can now do normal pinnacle bossing. We've even done Maven, we've done Uber Elder, we've done our first T17. We have done a lot in the last 2 days, and we have a lot to talk about. In the background right now should be various B-roll footage of me doing Maven invitations and getting my Atlas completion. I'm not going to dwell on this footage for long. Maybe at the end of the video I can include some of the really good stuff. But long story short, we went through every single normal boss in the game except the new ones that were added, and we tested out how the build feels against these monsters with the right amount of investment. I want to say that the hardest fight for me was Cirrus. Turns out that when your build puts down red stuff on the ground to deal damage, and the boss does the same, that leads to a situation where your visual clarity is obscured. The next hardest fight was Uber Aziri. What the hell is going on there, guys? Bladestorm is going to randomly gravitate towards the reflection clone and get you one-shot. I had to jerry-rig myself a form of reflection immunity to do that fight, and then we ended up killing her. It did take 2 tries for both Cirrus and Aziri's, but all of that ended up being worth it because we had a pretty clean run of the Feared. Alright, I didn't do it deathless, guys. We don't have that kind of gear yet, but we did have enough DPS and the ability to outplay all of the bosses in the Feared encounter. Aside from that, the build has been a blast to map on. I've been doing T16 strats, we have red altars, we have essences and harvest, and then most recently we have been doing Maven destructive play. That is what I used to farm the fragments I needed for Uber Elder. All in all, guys, I think that should be good enough footage for what we've done with the build so far. Let's get into the gear updates and then talk about all of the changes we've made and how we got the build from a 2 Watchstone run that was kind of falling off in terms of single target damage to a build that is doing a pretty good job of dealing with normal bosses. So first of all, you're going to want to upgrade your axe. This is an essence crafted axe. I bought myself a despot axe, and then I used deafening essence of contempt until I got the attack speed modifier. The only other thing you need on it is an open prefix, which you use the bench craft for increased physical damage and chance to impale, and that is your weapon upgrade. Alright, remember to quality it. If you are on a budget, use shrieking essences of contempt instead. The deafening ones cost a lot more, and the amount of bonus damage you get for it is really not worth it. Alright, we are looking for a upgrade from Sinvictus Metal, not an endgame best in slot. So don't waste all your money in one place. Once your weapon has been upgraded, the next thing you need to do is get yourself a 6-link. Now this is where I did something really stupid. I bought a base, crafted on it, and then spent the money to 6-link it. When you do that, that's like 7 divines, guys. Don't be stupid like me, alright? I was just throwing money into the fire. Buy a 6-linked base and then craft on it. It doesn't need to be a royal plate. It doesn't need to be a best in slot. You're going to want something usable, all right? Something you can leverage towards an upgrade, because the sooner you get some upgrades and you're farming the better content, the more money you can make per hour, and then you can use that to make yourself a better item. Okay, so I'm going to say that once again, guys. Get a 6-link base, and then use essence crafting to get resistances on it. Alright, I used essences of envy. Those were also unfortunately expensive. Once again, you can use shrieking if you are on a budget, but you want 1 or 2 resistances and some armor, and then you can toss some eldritch implicits on it. I'll go over those implicits later, okay? So this is my armor piece. It cost me 7 divines. It is not worth 7 divines, and it was stupid of me to spend that much money on this, okay? And I guess I talked too quickly about the 6-link, guys. The 6th link here is Pulverize. This is going to give us some increased area of effect. It's going to give us more melee area damage. All right, I'll probably edit this in before we move on to the boots that we just talked about. The next thing we need to do is we need to get rid of Purity of Elements. So we've been using Purity of Elements for resistances, and we've been using it for ailment immunity. Well, we need to find another way to get ailment immunity so we can use our aura slot for an an offensive aura like Pride. So how are you going to do this? You're going to get yourself a pair of eye level 84 or 86 boots, and then you're going to use Deafening Essence of Torment on it to get the chance to avoid being shocked mod. Once again, you are looking for something usable, you want some resistances, you want that chance to avoid shock mod, and then you want either life or armor, and you're going to benchcraft some move speed most likely. This is going to give you around 55% chance to avoid being shocked. We're going to get the remainder of the avoidance from our Eldritch Implicits. So you're going to use Red Embers for chance to avoid being shocked, and then you're going to use Blue Ichors to get chance to avoid elemental ailments. Now, how is this going to help us? Well, we're going to buy the Storm Shroud unique jewel. So that is right here. It's going to give you modifiers to chance to avoid being shocked apply to all elemental ailments. So for the price of one jewel socket, it costs like 3 divines, by the way, guys. It's not a cheap jewel. And your boots and affixes, you are going to get a aura to use on your character. All right, we can get rid of purity of elements, and we can use Pride, which is exactly what we did here. This is going to be roughly, on average, 30% more damage against single target enemies. Pride is an aura that makes enemies near you take more damage the longer they are in your aura. I don't think you can expect 40% more damage here. Maybe like 30% because monsters usually like teleport around, and they move around and they leave your aura. Okay, so this is our third vector of damage. All right, so quick recap. Upgrade your axe, get a 6-link, swap out of Purity of Elements and into Pride, and then the next thing you're going to do is you're going to get a few levels, or you're going to respec out of some of these life nodes, and you're going to get this jewel socket over here, because this is where we're going to put our Watcher's Eye prismatic jewel once we have the Pride aura. So this jewel cost me 5 divines. The Impale modifier on its own is 3 divines. If you want it with something synergistic like Vitality in this case, that's going to cost you more currency. I had the currency, so I spent it, but the most important mod here is Impales you inflict last 2 additional hits while using Pride. That is going to increase our Impale damage, giving us added physical damage for each Impale on the enemy. I think we are at 9 Impales now, so it's 5 by default. Then we have 6 from Brutal Skewering, 7 from Master of Metal, and then we have 2 more from the Watcher's Eye. So 9 Impales, guys. That is a lot of damage. So that is your next way of getting more damage on the build. Now, the other things I've done is I've gone ahead and gotten the Hemophilia corrupted with curse enemies with vulnerability on hit. I paid 1 divine for this corruption. This is a quality of life thing. You don't need it for trash monsters, but just not having to press a button is a godsend when you are looking to do efficient mapping. I'll go over the flasks later. Our helmet is still the same. I put some Eldritch Implicits on it to leverage a little bit more AoE and attack damage. This is not ideal. I will have to look and see where I can get a better upgrade. So I guess speaking of Eldritch Implicits, you want to do Pride Aura effect on your chest. You want to do Shock and Ailment avoidance on your boots. And then for the helm, I don't know yet. We'll figure that out. And then our amulet, guys. We've done a little bit of harvest crafting here. I got lucky and I found this fractured base. It doesn't need to be a fractured base. The defensive modifiers on this are much more important than that flat physical damage you're seeing. What we want is a high life roll, some chaos resist, and a open suffix to benchcraft +1 to minimum endurance charges. Here on the ring, we have something similar going on. It's a little bit of a resistances, some life, and an endurance charge. And then this is just a fat resistance ring. I haven't had the opportunity to get a 3rd endurance charge. I'll have to invest into this later. We're still using the Perseverance Vanguard belt, and I think we have qualityed all our gems. This is important, guys. If you hold down Alt, you'll notice that each quality on the support gem is roughly equivalent to 1 passive skill point. So if you're using like 7 supports and then you quality all of them, that's going to be like 7 levels worth of passives to use on those little nodes. So it's really important that you do this. I used Uber Lab to get the quality on this. It's up to you how you want to do it. And then let's talk about flasks. All right, so it turns out I was using the wrong flasks for some of the footage earlier in this video. All right, the flasks we have here, guys, is we have a sulfur flask. Get more duration on it, and then you're going to benchcraft regenerate life per second during effect. Since our build revolves around standing still to deal damage, you might as well get something that improves your defenses while you stand still. And then we have a Quartz Flask. This is something I got in anticipation for Delving. It's going to give you phasing. I have some other ideas on how to get phasing without the Quartz Flask later, but for now, we're using this. And then we have 15% of damage taken from hits as leech as life during effect. Alright, and then we have our Quicksilver, of course. This one is increased movement speed with increased charge recovery, and then we have a Granite Flask with increased duration and increased armor effect. For your Flask enchantments, you want used when you hit a rare. For the Granite and the Sulfur Flask, you don't need these up for clearing normal monsters. And then for your mobility and quality of life, you want Quartz and Quicksilver to be up as much as possible, so they have the used when charges reach full enchantment. For our health flask, we are still using the same flask we had from the campaign. It just has immunity to corrupted blood. I also have an idea how to solve that later, so we can get something like immunity to poison on this flask instead. So I think that's it for the gear upgrades, guys. If I forgot something, please let me know in the comments below. So one thing I forgot to talk about is Bladestorm of Uncertainty. This is the transfigured version of the skill gem. Let's do a quick comparison of both of the gems. We have Bladestorm over here. It does 301% of base damage. Then we have Bladestorm of Uncertainty. This does 347% of base damage. So what's the catch? If you use the transfigured version of the skill, you can no longer choose what storms come out of your character. So you can see here that I'm in Sand Stance, but I'm still putting out some Blood Storms. Alright, so it's going to give you more damage, but take away your agency over what storms you create. I would recommend using it all the time if you're a lazy bum that wants to press one less button. That way you don't have to swap stances as much. Personally, I like having the control over what storm comes out, so I go with Bladestorm for mapping, and then I go with Bladestorm of Uncertainty for bossing. So all of the boss footage you've seen in this video so far is with Bladestorm of Uncertainty. You're just getting more damage from it, and what type of storm you put out doesn't matter for those fights. Alright, so I just have it on weapon swap here. If I'm doing some pinnacle bosses, I put it into my 6 link and we're good to go. Passives, I've already been through. Everything looks the same. We are level 94, by the way. We have the Storm Shroud slotted in here. We have the Watcher's Eye slotted in here. Everything else is the same as the previous POB. When we hit level 95, I'm probably going to take Fortify Mastery to get 10% reduced damage over time taken, while you have at least 20 fortification. Damage over time is a real pain for this build. Speaking of which, we still aren't using Mercenaries, so I swapped from Soul of Lunaris into Soul of Aracali. This is once again to reduce the damage we take from damage over time, and then we are still using Soul of Rizlatha. I don't know what I'm doing with the Mercenaries, guys. Like, I don't even have any mercenaries, it seems. They're just gone. So I'll figure that out, and when I do, I will let you know what the BIS mercenary is for this build. The last thing we're going to do is look at our Atlas. So you'll see here that we've done all of the Maven's invitations, including the Feared. Very proud on that one. And then on our Atlas, we have all our favorite maps unlocked. We don't have all the Uniques map complete. I'm waiting for a friend to do that one together. And then we also have our Atlas trees to talk about. So let's go over the Atlas farming strategy. This is a continuation of the Keurig map sustain that I was using for Atlas progression. We have all our Keurig nodes still. We went into red altars over here, and then we took a map effect modifiers. All right, we took a little bit of shrines, and then we took Packed with Energy. That's one of the reasons you're going to see this build is so fast to play. You're going to be getting speed from your Sulfite. You're going to be getting speed from your Shrines. And then everything else here is just map effect and quantity. This is just a speed running setup for red altars. The next is our Essence and Harvest. We have also gone into map effect for this. This is for Essence running and Harvest. Same idea. We have Packed with Energy, a bunch of Harvest nodes. We have the Essence nodes. And then we've also invested into a little bit of Scarabs. So we have all of the Scarabs that are worth money on the auction house right now. So we have Cartography Scarabs, Ambush Scarabs, and Essence Scarabs. And then we also took these nodes here that make rare monsters drop more Scarabs. And then this node here that makes Scarabs more likely to be less common. All right, if you're doing Harvest, if you're doing Essence, you're fighting a lot of rares. So the idea here is we are leveraging that in our advantage to find more Scarabs. So this is Essence / Harvest. And then the last one, probably the one I'm having the most fun with, is Maven Destructive Play. So what's going on here? I've gone ahead and gotten all of the map tier effects. We have a bit of delve nodes here. More on that later. Let's go over to Maven's Destructive Play. The main point here is to get these nodes leading up to Destructive Play so that you fight multiple bosses at the end if you full cleared the map. And then we are adding a chance to drop unique maps like Synthesis maps, Conqueror maps, and Shaper Elder maps. Right, so we are finding a lot of these maps in our Destructive Play strategy. So you'll see here that I have a bunch of different Conqueror, Shaper, and Elder maps from the strat. All right, back to the passive tree. What we're using the rest of our points on is map effect modifiers, and then we have also gone into King's March a little. I don't really know what I'm doing here. We're trying Refiner's Bargain. It makes items dropped with rarity by possessed monsters have a chance to turn into dust, and then we've gone with Tormented Spirits to make more possessed monsters appear, and then we've taken some ore nodes here for the Settlers of Calgar. I don't really think this is a good idea, guys. I just didn't know what else to do with the points, so take things I'm saying with a grain of salt. And then the only other stuff I have in this tree is, of course, the Pact with Energy and the shaping the mountains and all that stuff. All right, so very basic tree, and that is the strategies I will be using to make money on this character. I feel like I've been rambling on a lot. I don't really know what else there is to say. My next crafting project is going to be working with this Superior Despot Axe base. I want to get a better Essence crafted axe to use on my character. I bought this one for 1 divine. It's 30 quality. So that was nice. And then I guess I didn't tell you about the currency tab. This is what it looks like. I'm kind of broke. I spent all of my money on upgrades and getting the Atlas completion and stuff done. So that's that. So I think that's everything I wanted to talk about in today's video. Next time, we're going to be going over Delve. I haven't started delving yet. I said we'd do it together, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So with that said, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you soon with a new Delve video. Bye!